This is from the CatholicHerald.com, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt. This was published December 27th, written by Niwa Limbu. The Guardian's coverage of Opus Dei treats facts as optional. So, not happy. Let's read this. Like many Catholics who are familiar with their faith as it is actually lived, Opus Dei rarely resembles the institution so often presented in the secular press. It does not fit easily into the narratives that are routinely imposed upon Catholic bodies. Instead, the picture painted is frequently one of cult and secrecy, drawn less from Catholic reality than popular fiction. Much of this framing still owes more to the Da Vinci Code than to any serious engagement with the life of the Church. So note very quickly, just in this first paragraph, we started out talking about Opus Dei and very quickly slid from talking about and trying to define Opus Dei to talking about serious engagement with the life of the Church. And by church, they mean the Roman Catholic Church, not the Church of Opus Dei. But of course, Opus Dei will paint itself right into the same corner as the Catholic Church so as not to be able to be criticized without saying, well, you're criticizing the Catholic Church, or, you know, to deflect essentially from it. And I feel like you see that in this paragraph right here, because we start out talking about how Opus Dei is, you know, rarely resembles this institution that people talk about and blah, 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 and the Da Vinci Code. But it's because people aren't seriously engaging with the life of the Church. Well, is it that they're not seriously engaging with the life of the Church, or is it that they don't understand Opus Dei? Because Opus Dei is apparently intentionally opaque and vague. With fiction, the imagination is given free rein and reality becomes distorted. Okay, well, you know, the Da Vinci Code is not the only book that's been written that has anything to say about Opus Dei. In fact, at this point, I would say that the Da Vinci Code is the least of the literature. Of course, over time, this produces a false picture when we have seen repeatedly in media portrayals of Catholicism, which is often treated not as a concrete reality to be examined carefully, but as a symbolic canvas onto which wider anxieties and grievances are projected. That's an interesting way to say that you don't like hearing about people raising valid concerns about the structure of a religious organization. For Opus Dei, this makes it an easy target for the secular press. It is poorly understood, sufficiently obscure to be cast as unsettling, organized enough to appear suspicious, and Catholic enough to provoke instinctive mistrust among readers already primed to expect wrongdoing. That is such a misleading and honestly inaccurate thing to say, and spits in the face of some really hard work by some incredibly talented journalists and survivors of this organization. Let's read this again. It's poorly misunderstood, sufficiently obscure to be cast as unsettling, organized enough to appear suspicious, and Catholic enough to provoke instinctive mistrust. Is it poorly understood because it's obscure, or because it seems to march by this do as we say, not as we do ethos? Is it sufficient? Is it suspicious because it's organized? Or is it suspicious because certain types of people keep popping up in certain types of places who happen to have certain types of affiliations with other certain types of people who all tie back to this organization? I understand correlation doesn't equal causation, but, you know, I talked a minute ago about missing the forest for the trees. I don't intend to insult Niwa Limbu's intelligence here, but I think they're missing the forest for the trees just a little bit. Is it Catholic enough that it provokes instinctive mistrust? Is that the reason why? Or is it because this organization has a history of targeting and grooming children for recruitment into its organization, telling these children to lie about it to their parents, telling these children to keep it a secret, encouraging these children to engage in self-harm, things like wearing a spiked chain around their leg or literally whipping themselves with a whip? Is it because it's Catholic, or is it because in France, the organization was convicted of labor trafficking? Is it distrusted because it's Catholic, or because over in Argentina, 43 plus people now have spoken out saying that they were treated like slaves in this organization, given absolutely no rights, worked until their bodies and minds broke? It has been my opinion for a while now that this entire situation that Opus Dei now finds itself in, that I am now bearing witness to, by virtue of the fact that I stumbled upon this shit, wouldn't be talking about it if I hadn't literally stumbled upon it when I was minding my own business 5+ years ago, just trying to get through my own religious deconstruction. When I stumbled upon what in my mind amounted to one of the greatest human rights violations and abuses that the Catholic Church has ever seen. Opus Dei has no one to blame for the current state of affairs than itself. They wanted to play games, and they found out. They're finding out. And I don't know how much Niwa Limbu was paid to write this ridiculous puff piece, but to misrepresent and to downplay what real human beings are saying that they suffered is just absolutely insane to me. Of course, it's the Catholic Herald, so why should I expect any different? I mean, for all I know, this is another media outlet that has Opus Dei fingerprints all over it. We know that they're in media. They're all over things like EWTN and Exaudi and Info Vaticana. But again, the inability to critically engage with what is a real issue. We're talking about like crimes against humanity here. We're talking about some of the worst affronts to human dignity that you can possibly imagine. Guys, I'm not being hyperbolic here. I'm not over here just going off to go off. And it's obvious to anyone who has spent longer than the time that it took for Niwa Limbu to slap this article together to realize that none of this holds any water. It's impossible to look at the facts, to read the stories, to read the research, to read the books, to listen to the interviews. It's impossible to do all of those things and come away with the impression that Opus Dei has a bad reputation because it's a little bit secretive and it's Catholic. That's not why. I know it. They know it. And I hope you know it, because Niwa Limbu and the rest of the gang over at thecatholicherald.com think that their readers are gullible and stupid, and that they will believe, like I said, whatever slop they are fed. Anything to remove the little snags and little uncomfortable things that you might get hung up on as you're trying to work your way through this issue. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Sure, some bad things may have happened to some people somewhere at some point in time, and that's very sad, but also nothing bad has ever happened to anyone because we pride ourselves on living out the truest and most authentic form of Christian charity. Bullshit. It's bullshit. I know it. They know it. Niwa Limbu might not know it because they might be a true believer. I'm not going to go after this person because I don't know them and I don't know what they believe and I don't know how they feel, and I don't even know if this is a real person. Might not be. But this is the message that the Catholic Herald, and who the Catholic Herald represents, wants mainstream Catholics to consume and understand and believe about the current crisis that is facing Opus Dei. Well, it's unpopular just because it's a little secretive and it's Catholic and people don't like that. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. You sound so incredibly small-minded and ignorant. Also, I'm scrolling through here, and they're nitpicking, it seems, in my opinion. You know, they make a mention in passing. Where was it? I saw the number 43, so I know that they did. Says the Guardian's report of 15 December on an international gathering in Argentina, former members of Opus Dei is revealing less for what it establishes than for what it attempts to suggest. Stripped of its most eye-catching element, the story concerns a conference in Buenos Aires organized around the testimonies of 43 women who allege they were exploited when they were young and who are now engaged in a legal dispute with Opus Dei and its regional leadership. That dispute is already underway, prosecutors are investigating, lawyers are involved, and public debate in Argentina has been ongoing for some time. Again, seems like a massive minimization of the actual scope of the issue, but okay. But then they go on to say that apparently there's some line about Pope Leo privately urging organizers to convene the conference, which it is true that Pope Leo has spoken very supportively of journalists and people who are attempting to defend human rights. This is true. Whether or not that amounts to privately urging them, who knows? But, you know, that seems to be the number one gripe that Niwa Limbu and the people at the Catholic Herald are taking issue with. That they don't know whether Pope Leo knew about the conference at all. That's what they want to argue about. Not the human rights violations that people are trying to discuss, not the strides that people are trying to make in the realm of protecting people against clerical abuse, or simply educating people on the reality of what clerical abuse is, what it looks like, how it manifests, what to do about it. It's not about any of those things. It's about whether or not Pope Leo knew about this conference. And I think that right there tells me everything that I need to know. There are always going to be two groups of people. There's going to be the people who can handle reality and contend with what is in front of them, and there are going to be the people who are not. They just can't. For whatever reason, they cannot, will not, won't. And in that same vein, there are two types of people. People who are a part of the solution and people who are a part of the problem. You get one choice, and you must choose, or you will default to being a part of the problem. You don't get to sit the fence. But anything to comfort the rattled minds of those who have bought and believed the lie that Opus Dei is in some way, shape, or form synonymous with the Catholic Church, and that people don't like it simply because it's been a little secretive and it's Catholic. So I think that's a pretty good article to conclude on. I don't really have anything else to say about it, but I wanted to bring it to your attention and highlight one of the ways that, yet again, this whole situation with the 43 women, and then, you know, it's not just these 43. Sometimes you read articles like this, and they would have you believe that it's just these 43 random people and their lawyers who are drumming up all this humdrum drama. But that's not true. That is such a gross oversimplification. And like I said, it spits in the face of some incredible work that has been done by survivors, human rights advocates, and journalists. And I'm not talking about myself here, by the way, in saying that. I'm talking about real human rights advocates, real journalists, the people who are doing the really hard work, boots on the ground. It spits in the face of years, decades of work. And I couldn't let that be without saying something about it, because I just think it's incredibly fucked. And I hope that you can see the problems with it too.